My name is Daria Amin, and I'm the programs coordinator at 51 Labs, and I have a number of very amazing panelists today with me. So I'm sure that it will be an informative and an exciting discussion. I will start with them introducing themselves, then we will dive into the questions, and later in the panel, if you have any questions, we will gladly take them. I would like to start with the entrepreneur we have on stage, Kak Ahmed. Could you please introduce yourself and let the audience know about you?
Welcome, everyone. I'm Ahmed. I'm the co-founder of Kurdivia, and I'm in charge of its marketing and data analyzing the data. Kurdivia is a trivia game that is in Kurdish, produced by Kurdish youth for the Kurdish population. Thank you, Daria Khan.
Can we go to Savo? Ms. Savo Rasool, please, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Hello, good morning. My name is Savo Bakhtiar. I have about 5 to 6 years of experience in international B2B sales and CRM. And it has been about 4 or 4.5 years since I started this journey with 51 Labs as the community and partnership manager. And we are in the journey of supporting entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Kurdistan specifically, but Iraq generally. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Savo Khan. Kak Rose, how do we introduce you? An entrepreneur and angel investor, partner at Euphrates Venture. Please let us know about Kak Rose Raouf.
Thank you very much. So I'm Rawaz Raouf. I'm a partner at Euphrates Ventures. Euphrates Ventures is a venture capital firm that invests in technology startups in Kurdistan, growing technology startups in Kurdistan and Iraq.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Kak Shivan.
Hello.
Could you tell us a bit about Kak Shivan, the head of projects at the Prime Minister's office?
Hello, and thank you. It's great to be here. I'm Shivan Isa. I'm project supervisor at the Foreign Policy Unit at the Office of the Prime Minister. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Kak Ahmed, you are the co-founder of Kurdivia. Could you tell our audience a bit more about Kurdivia? What is Kurdivia?
Sure.
I believe that all of them know Kurdivia. You have the busiest booth
Actually,
here,
I do want to ask, how many here have heard of Kurdivia? Raise your hand.
I have for sure.
Wow, that's a good portion. So, as many of you know, Kurdivia is a game. It's in Kurdish. It's very simple. We ask questions. You have 10 to 15 or 20 seconds to answer the question. If you choose the right question, you go to the next question. If you choose the right answer, and then if you choose the wrong answer, you're out of the game. So that's how the game goes, question by question, until usually we have around 100 to 120,000 players in each game at 9, 10 p.m. And then those who reach the end question win the prize that we have set for the winners. So it's either cash or a coupon to use at a restaurant or the product of the sponsor. So the game runs live at 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. and we've recently added 8 p.m. but it's only sports questions. It's for the sports fans. A lot of the users requested this game, and some of the other users wanted the sports questions to be removed from the 9 and 10 p.m. game, so we just added a special game for them. Right now we have around 300,000 players a week, around 500,000 players a month, and daily we have around 150,000 players playing the games throughout the day.
That's all great to hear.
Thank you.
And I believe that we do have a gap in the entertainment sector, so it's always glad to see new businesses, innovative ideas.
Thank you.
Here, Savo Khan from 51 Labs. Could you tell us about 51 Labs as a startup incubator? What do you guys do?
That's without a doubt one of my favorite questions to answer. I'm just kidding, I am not. But on a serious note, 51 Labs is an international startup incubator. We work with entrepreneurs and later stage startups to grow and develop their businesses. And we mainly do that through 3 main channels: our training and programs, our mentorship or advisory, and then our engaging community. And we actually started with a pilot program back in 2017 here in the city of Erbil. And we were amazed by the number of creative young individuals who had these amazing, innovative ideas, but they did not know how to take it to the next level. So fast forward to 2022, we have run more than 8 incubation programs so far in different languages across Kurdistan, and we were able to support hundreds of entrepreneurs to establish and operate their businesses. We are in our second round of our acceleration service, which is a program that is designed for a later stage startup to develop and expand, if it's expanding geographically or in terms of products or services. Also, we have different program that is dedicated to female or women-owned later stage startups. And we recently collaborated or partnership with AUK, the American University of Kurdistan, to launch the first on-campus business incubator. I can tell you way, way more, but we actually have around 20 cubes of our entrepreneurs who are exhibiting here. So I would love for you to go and visit them and learn firsthand how these programs help them launching their business.
Perfect. That's all great news, Savo Khan. Kakros, to you, Euphrates Venture and venture capital funds. What's the role of these people? What do you guys do for those of you who don't know about Euphrates Venture?
Thank you. This is an excellent question, and thanks for the opportunity. So the venture capital world looks at risky markets generally. And startups by design tend to be in a more risky environment, or they could be an early stage, later stage. The type of companies that we look at, or the type of startups that we look at, need to have at least a minimum viable product, and they need to have at least some traction. So we do look at companies that are on the growth stage, primarily, because we want to be the enabler of their growth as they expand their user base and go through their journey. So far, we have raised $20 million for the ecosystem for Iraq and Kurdistan. We have a 4-year investment horizon, so we have to invest this $20 million in the next 3 years now left. And we have a 10-year exit period, so we're looking at a long enough time frame, we think, that startups could really show themselves and they could prove themselves during that timeline. I can see a few of the companies that we have backed here, and we have a few more. So, for example, if you have been to the Miswak booth, that's one of the companies that we've invested in, and we believe in the founder and their team. They're probably the best e-commerce startup, they're no longer a startup, they're a growing company. And now they're going through scalability. Another startup that is here is Kesk. They're working primarily on renewable energy and energy consulting. And we feel like the approach that they're taking is fairly unique, and it's a data-driven approach that could be highly scalable. Other startups that we've supported include Al Sari', which is a food delivery startup in Baghdad. I've personally invested in IQ Cars, which is a platform for selling cars online, and people can download them. We've also invested in a startup called Al Nakhla that basically has a subscription-based service to take care of your palm tree in Baghdad. And we're looking for more ideas and more areas that we could invest. We're ready to support startups, and we're ready to help startups in their scalability and growth.
That's wonderful news. I'm sure the entrepreneurs will love that, because lack of access to finances is one of the issues that always comes up when we talk about businesses, when we talk about startups. So that's great news. Thank you, Kakrawaz. To you, Kak Shivan. So there's something called the priority unit. Some of us might know a bit about it, but it could be a mystery for many. Could you tell us a bit about the priority unit? Why was it developed?
Yeah, absolutely. So priority unit is the international best practice. There are a lot of countries implementing the same methodology, the same approach. We have in UK something called delivery unit. Back in 2001, when Sir Tony Blair and Michael Barber tried to implement best project, best priority in the government. So the Prime Minister tried to implement the international best practice and establish a unit here. It's a dedicated team of people committed to making sure that the best and most strategic projects are implementing according to set of targets that we have in the government. We have inside the priority, we have 4 different clusters, and all the clusters that we are working on, and by cluster I mean teams and group, all the groups are enabled, are created to support startup businesses and to support microfinance. We have a cluster that specifically working on digitalization. When the Prime Minister came to power and the cabinet so far have invested over $50 million in digitalization. We have mandated Department of Information Technology to have a strong power to be able to deliver the technology that our startup, that they wanted from the government. So digitalization is a part of business facilitation process that our entrepreneurs are deemed and urgently need to flourish their businesses. We have another cluster which also supporting startup businesses called economic development. The Prime Minister was really clear in the beginning of the cabinet when he said that we should not depend on oil and gas. We need desperately to do economic diversification. We believe that the youth, the power of youth, the innovative capacity to unlock the potential is already a great source of economy. Therefore, now we are currently trying to revitalize the process of microfinance in the government. And we have a team that have done an amazing job. Of course, we have used your paper, 5-1 Labs paper, to be used as a guidance, as an insight. We are doing great on that, and thanks to 5-1 Lab and other incubators. We have also another team that maybe most of them are here now working on banking sector and banking reform. We want to enable this access to credit market. We want our entrepreneurs, people who will trying to start a business, to have access to MasterCard. We have came to realization that our bank, the public bank, unfortunately, not having an integrated core banking system is damaging the business. And not having the advanced banking system is not doable if you want to be in parallel with advanced countries, with developed countries. So as you can see, we are in the priority unit. We have different clusters, and they're all built to support entrepreneurs. Actually, we have an amazing relationship with 5-1 Labs, and we've decided that for some of the entrepreneurs, they need to be placed in the Prime Minister's office for them to see what are we doing in the government.
Well, thank you very much. It's always exciting to see different actors in the ecosystem getting together and deciding that we can do it and we will. It's always bringing hope to the entrepreneurs and everyone here in the region. Savo Khan, my next question is for you. So you have been working with entrepreneurs since 2017. You have had entrepreneurs from across the country, from different fields. From your experience, could you tell us a brief about the challenges? Give us a brief. What are the challenges businesses face here?
Sure. Although Kakshivan kind of covered some of it, but I will go over it again. As you heard at the beginning when I introduced 5-1 Labs, from our program, you would understand that we are with the entrepreneurs throughout their entire entrepreneurial journey and process. So you would understand that we are with them throughout all of the challenges and the obstacles that they are facing from the get-go to the point where they are ready to be invested in, or even after that. And one of them, I can mention a couple of the main ones that keep being brought up by the entrepreneurs and the startups. The main one would be the business registration and the regulation and the framework around that. Although thankfully, and due to the paper that we presented, a lot of the registration process has been digitized, which before this digitization, it would take a lot of time. Sometimes it would take up to a 6 month or a year for a business to register a trade name or just to register their business. And sometimes it would take up to $1,000 or even more to be able to register. Hopefully with this whole digitization process, these will be reduced or eliminated. And we are planning to sort of test this out with our current cohort. But even with those, there's some few other obstacle comes along with the whole registration process. There is still the requirement of having a physical office to be able to register. If it's your own or it's a lease. Then there is the whole matter of fact of if you register in Kurdistan, but if you decide and go to expand to federal Iraq, you would have to go through the entire process of registration and the entire cost all over again in Baghdad, which is affect the growth and the development of any startup. There's the matter of fact of the tax policy. When a business registers, of course, by law, the tax policy applies to them. But the percentage that they have to pay out of the revenue, it is the same as it is for a larger enterprise. A lot of entrepreneurs and startups ask why it is the same percentage. And I think it's law number 113, and the percentage is around 15% of the revenue, if I'm not wrong. This is when it comes to the registration. Then there is the limited intellectual property protection. A lot of tech or innovative businesses, their content, their patent, their whole brand is very important to be protected. But because of the law is from 1970. It was issued by federal Iraq. It needs to be updated. It needs to be reformed. Then it needs to be enforced by the government. Because the law does not protect the startups, and it created this idea inside the mind of the startups that kind of limit them to create unique products or services through their startups. And also with the lack of this enforcement, it will increase the likelihood of idea theft, which is the main thing that entrepreneurs or startups, especially the innovative one, are very afraid of. Then there's the obstacles with the banking, which Kashvan kind of covered, and the e-payment method. A lot of local banks do not provide a startup loan. Even if they do provide it, the requirement, eligibility is very restricted. And sometimes they require an asset or a house as a collateral, which a one-man's startup, one entrepreneur cannot provide that. So you would see there's a lot of limitation to access to finance. When it comes to e-payment, thankfully, throughout these exhibitions, on a daily basis, we hear, for example, NAS Wallet. Yesterday, FIB was officially launched. There's Zaincash, there's Asia Hawala. But the ease of integration of these methods with the startups and their application is not that very easy. It has a lot of obstacles, which also, again, affect the increase of customer base for these entrepreneurs when they are trying to expand. Then I'm pretty sure maybe Ahmed can kind of cover that. There's an apparent digital gap when it comes to skills.
Correct.
A lot of our entrepreneurs depend on outsourcing developers, but someone who's not in the market would not completely understand the user experience and the user interface for a local startup. Then there is also the investment. There is some sort of lack of awareness about the importance of the investment law. You would hear a lot of startups. Maybe recently it changed a bit, but it's still common to get investment from word-of-mouth referral or the traditional one, which has a simple agreement that might not protect either the investor or the entrepreneur in front of law. So we need to sort of work on the investment law. We need to work on enforcing this law. And we also need to increase the awareness of the investment opportunities, both for the startups and also the investment.
Perfect.
That was briefly shortened for you.
Thank you very much, and we will for sure touch upon some of them in the next questions. Kak Ahmed Savo has mentioned a number of challenges. Which ones could you relate to, or if there are any specific challenges related to your business, to the kind of industry that you come from?
Actually, she touched all the wounds we have at Kurdivia. This is because of our rapid growth, we have faced all of these issues on a very fearful level. Like, those problems have almost cost us to die sometimes. So the most, let's say, damaging problems that we're facing, the biggest obstacles we have at Kurdivia for our growth. One of them, until now, we haven't been able to register even through the online system because the naming never comes back. So every name we apply, it's taken, can't be used. This has this in it. This doesn't have a meaning, and this is a problem because until now we haven't been able to reserve a name, because name reservation on the online system is the first step to go with the registration process. And that process alone has taken us many weeks or months now, and we still haven't been able to register a name. Two, the skills level, the skill problem that she talked about is our biggest issue. Actually, it's the core, because Cordivia is the technical skills that we have. That's it. The system we are using that's able to process hundreds of thousands of people within seconds, within milliseconds, sometimes within nanoseconds, is so advanced that very rare people here know how to use it. And if there are people who know how to use it, they're working at big organizations or big companies that are paying salaries beyond our entire revenue. So that's a huge issue. If you're in a market with a skill pool that's so little, and that skill pool is already taken up by the giant companies, the giant players, then as a startup, it's very hard to get your hands on those. We could, and we have, used equity as a attractive, let's say, offer to these skilled workers, skilled developers. But because this is new in our market, the startup world is new, this equity-based working and the whole entrepreneurship journey is new here, it's hard to make them understand what that means for their future. But if we give them equity, as opposed to this big salary they're receiving now. So there are, thankfully, some organizations like Recoded that are training developers on the front end and the back end. They have month-long boot camps, and about 2 or 3 of our developers and UX UI designers are alumni or current students in Recoded, which is a hopeful thing here. And I hope these boot camps are increased and their numbers are increased here, both by the support from the government and the support from the private sector, because this availability of skill helps everyone, not just the startups. It helps the whole economy. So those are 2 issues: the government bureaucracy for registration and the skills, the issues that we have faced. Other issues that we have faced with the payment system that she talked about, so I'm talking from Cordivia's perspective, some of the winners of the game win money, and we need to send this money to the winners. So what we're doing right now is a manual process. We have to call the person, hey, congrats, you've won money, so how do you want me to send you this money? And they're like, I don't know, I have Facebook. We're like, we can't send money through Facebook. Do you have FastPay? Do you have NAS Wallet? Do you have Zencash? They're like, what's FastPay? We're like, okay, so go to the Play Store, write FastPay, download it, and then it's just a whole manual issue because people are not educated about the payment system, as opposed to, let's say, PayPal. Everybody who could just connect to our app through PayPal, let's say, if it was here, it would be an automated process. We wouldn't even think about it. The moment they win, the money is transferred to their account, right? But as Savo also talked about, thankfully, some new systems like FIB might be able to automate these systems in the future. So we are hopeful about that. Currently, we're managing it manually, but I don't know, it's not scalable, for us in the future. We're trying to actually go around this issue by changing everything to coupons. So you would win a coupon in the app instead of winning cash, and this coupon can be validated electronically at the vendor's sales point. So that's 3 issues that we've talked about that we've faced so far. The 4th issue is with data. Kakshivan, you mentioned that you want to get away from oil, right? Data is the new oil in the world. And by using data, I think Kurdistan can take a huge leap in this region. I think the other countries, for example, the UAE, have been able to really advance by taking advantage of all the data they have. As a startup and as a marketing agency, let's say, for people, as a let's say, marketing tool that people can use to sponsor, because we have sponsors, this data is vital for my business model. I want to know how many businesses are here, what are their revenue, how much do they spend on marketing, what are their budgets, what's my target market's value and its size. And this kind of data is missing in a lot of points. And for us to have that data, for now for Kurdistan, hopefully for all of Iraq, but even for the Kurdistan region, for that data to exist, 1, maybe it exists, but 2, I don't have access to it. I don't know where it exists. I don't know how I can access it. So even if it exists, if it could be digitalized and accessible to startups, it would be a huge advantage for us on all the fronts. For planning for the future, for investors, when I talk to them about my idea, I can tell them what's the evaluation for the future, what's the opportunity that exists. So those are the 4 main problems that I can think about now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kak Ahmed. So we have the registration process, the gap when it comes to skills, the issues with e-payment and people's trust or even awareness about these tools for e-payment. We also have the lack of adequate data. and even other issues, tax process and the tax reform. That's a long list, Kakrawaz, of challenges. How do these challenges affect the investment scene here?
So I've been working in Kurdistan and Iraq for 10 years, so I'm not gonna repeat everything that everyone has said. So I'll actually try to give some practical advice, because I think we always have massive ambitions, but what we need to really look at is that the change in government process is slow, and we need to be realistic about that. So in order to, I think if I had to classify the biggest problem first is access to finance. It's not, we don't have a lack of talent in Kurdistan, we have incredibly talented people. For access to finance issues to be fixed, we have, as investors, we have two main issues. One of them, there is a 51% law that Baghdad has for company registration. And this has created a massive uncertainty around what sort of companies can be registered. Because at the moment, according to the interpretation that we have, it also applies on Kurdistan. And because it's not being tested in courts, no matter how rosy we think, ultimately investors will tell us, foreign investors, people that are not necessarily as familiar with the situation in Kurdistan, they will tell us that there is a risk that this startup may never be sold to a foreign investor. And as you know, technology startups are global. They're no longer regional players. I could imagine Kurdivia being a global player, a regional player. So when you have investor base that can be truly regional or global, they look at these issues as key points. So that law has to be removed, it has to be abolished, because there is no way Iraq can afford to have a 51% ownership rule by Iraqis at this stage. We are too early in the investment cycle in Iraq and in Kurdistan. So that's one, but that is, again, it's a hope. I hope it can be removed. In the meanwhile, we need to find practical solutions around that. Kag Ahmed and I think Savo mentioned issues around tax. I have spoken to a lot of the entrepreneurs here today in the last 3 days. A lot of them are afraid of tax. They are afraid of tax because of unpredictability of how it will be applied on them. Everyone knows that the law is 15%. Nobody knows for sure what 15% means. Someone called it gotra in Kurdish. I don't know how to translate that in English, but I'm saying it Kakshivan like that because we as investors need to be honest with the government about these issues. So we have to find workarounds, because changing the legal system in Iraq and Kurdistan will take time. It will take time. So what I'm urging that Kakshivan and his team can look at is at least allow opening of branches of foreign companies to open here. There are really good laws in UAE that startups like Kurdivia could use. There are really good laws that Bahrain has. There are really good laws that Estonia has. Why shouldn't be a startup allowed to incorporate their processes there while Kurdistan is going through the process of change? At least do work here. And then as the laws and regulations catch up here, they can actually tap into the financial markets here, etc. So that's the two key issues that I would highlight: is opening of foreign branches of companies for tackling these two issues, which is tax and 51% ownership. There are many other issues that need to be fixed, and I've written a very long thread that I will share with everyone, because I don't want to repeat all the pain that a typical startup has to go through here, but it's a lot. It's a lot more than any other startup has to go through in any other country. I'm not talking about US, Europe. I'm talking about every other country has access to, many countries have access to PayPal. Many countries have access to Upwork. These are tools that can be used by freelancers, etc. Most countries have are allowing Facebook sellers and Instagram shops, etc. These tools, unfortunately, due to many years of sanctions and many years of anti-money laundering, terrorism, etc., are today not available for an Iraqi entrepreneur. Today, a Google developer cannot open a Google developer account based in Iraq. So a publisher here cannot say, I'm from Iraq. He has to say he's from a country that is not here. This causes major problems for anyone that wants to start a company here, because you need to say that you're somewhere else while you're actually here. So we need to think outside the box. We need to think, you need to come up with innovative solutions, and we really need quick solutions. We cannot wait for another 10 years and miss the information age in Kurdistan. We cannot miss this window that we have, and that's my message.
Thank you so much, Kak Rawaz. And I keep seeing Ahmed nodding. I feel like he could relate to many of the points that you have mentioned.
Actually, Mr. Rawaz, exactly with that the point about the foreign company. So it was much easier for us to incorporate in Delaware in the USA online. We just paid $500 online and sent our passports, and they opened a company for us as a corporate in Delaware, USA. But then we were like, okay, so we have worked around the Kurdistan problem of registering a company. Let's just open a branch here. Then I went to the Daira, the place for foreign companies. They were like, oh, you just incorporated now. Oh, you need a year or 2 years outside to be incorporated time since you're open, and you need to have taxes, pay taxes there, and you need to have revenue and this stuff, and then we can open your company branch here because of money laundering and etc., ghost companies, paper companies. We're like, okay, then that goes, that workaround doesn't work. So even though it was much easier to incorporate in the US, we can't open a branch here. So we still have to go through the registration in Kurdistan. And as I said, the name reservation is an issue there. I just want to mention that point. That would make it much easier, because even in the registration in Kurdistan, there's no such thing as a startup. And there's no such thing as a tech company. You have to open as a general company. It's not in the system. There's no such thing as that. You're a startup or you're a tech company. You're a general trading company that's doing technology. So, you know, that education is not even there. When I tell them I'm a startup, they're like, what do you mean? Right now, Kurdivia's office is open under Nusingay photocopy. You know those that do insisaq on the street? So it's the only workaround that we could find.
Thank you for your comments, Kak Ahmed. I know that you have a lot to say and too many questions to answer, but we can talk about, can we have Kak Shivan's mic on?
Is it open? Ah, okay.
Yeah, so
yes, I have a lot to say.
we will have, I believe we still have time for that, but first, let me ask you, what are the communication channels between the government and these active actors in the ecosystem? How do you stay up to date about the issues an investor has, a startup incubator, the entrepreneurs and businesses?
So I think all of them, they are making legitimate concerns, and we are totally informed about all the issues. And we're working on it on a daily basis. There is a quote saying that a government's regulation can be a company's opportunity. What we have done, I mean, I'm talking about the regulation side of it. So on the regulation side, the KRG and the Prime Minister, or let's call it the priority unit, we have not only created regulation, sometimes we deregulate some of the obstacles. For example, in the company registration, we have eliminated more than 10 stations to facilitate this process. But as you know, it takes time. You need to develop a software for it. And we do believe that our IT, the Department of Information Technology, we have capable software developers to do it. This transition mode will take time. I published something on my Twitter 3-4 days ago, and I was talking about the Maslow theory. We are still in the bottom of the basic needs. I agree with Kag Ahmed. He has legitimate concerns. Currently, we are working to have this regulatory environment for business. We have re-regulated, we have deregulated, and now we are trying to create some new regulations to facilitate things. I mean, this is amazing to have a Kurdivia vision for our entrepreneurs. There are like tons and tons of similar businesses. In terms of the other areas that they mentioned, microfinance. We do know that in the government, the past experience, the government, it was a really bad paradigm of doing microfinance. We have adopted what was the federal government did, but we're going to change that. And we have an international company to help us with this. We're going to involve incubators that can identify who is the right person to do. The female participation in microfinance was only 14% in the government. We're going to triple that. We want female to participate in microfinance. So it's not only about Kak Ahmed. It's the issue is bigger than this. Kak Ahmed also mentioned the data issue. Now, when we came to the cabinet, when the Prime Minister came to power, We invested more than $7 million in opening one centralized data center. You guys are most welcome to visit the Department of Information Technology. It's one of the kind in the Middle East, but we are just receiving the data. I totally agree. Having the data will contribute positively to the GDP. You will have your own balance sheet. You know the agriculture sector and its contribution to the whole GDP. I agree we don't have the sufficient data, but all of these issues that was raised by Kak Rawaz, Savo Khan and Kak Ahmed, we are now working on it. But of course this transition, because we were so busy with fighting with ISIS, because we have a fragmented economic system, because we didn't have sustainable fund from the federal government, therefore we have delayed those issues. And I mean, fortunately and luckily right now in the priority unit, we have reached out to external stakeholders. We know how vital businesses can be to the government. I mean, we're going to reach out to GIZ, to USA, to all the other development agencies to help us in how to support these kind of businesses. We know the contribution of microfinance to the big economy, an economy for everyone. So I do agree with all our colleagues said. They have legitimate concerns, but we are right now working on it. Is it going to take long? I don't know. It depends whether we will face another rocket missile from a country. But of course, I mean, there's a dedicated team as a cluster working on each of those priorities. Hopefully we will be able to do the business registration as soon as possible. I know we are at the final phase. The DIT is doing a great job of developing this portal. So yeah, hopefully we will be able to tackle the issues was raised by Kak Rawaz, by Kak Ahmed. I know it's difficult, but we have the vision for it. We know where we are standing. Of course, Kak Rawaz is right. Of course, if you need to be in parallel with developed countries, you need to remove those legal obstacles in the government. We have a dedicated team. We have experts with that. Hopefully, we will be able to pave the way for businesses, for startups to do their job properly. The communication channel, we have expanded our network. We are doing great with agencies like you, like USAID, with GIZ. We're going to bring them in. We're going to have a unified vision, a defined policy. I just wanted to say something on Kak Rawaz's observation, and that's not the credit for the government. The idea of globalization economy or liberalization politic was actually raised by the Cabinet 9, that we need to open up to the trade. We need to go to the private sector. We need to open to the Gulf country. And the Prime Minister, through his bilateral relationship, visited Bahrain 3-4 times, visited Qatar. We are really nearly there to close a deal with Emirates. We're going to send our agriculture product really soon. We're going to see pomegranate maybe on the shelf of Emirati companies or markets. This is unprecedented in the government. So we know where we are standing. And Kak Rawaz is absolutely right. We need to open up to the globalization. We need to have a financial, a complete financial picture of what's going on in the government. So hopefully with me, my colleagues, people like Kak Ahmed, Savo Khan, we address the issues. I know what I should do as a priority in it. Hopefully in the next 2-3 years, we will be able to tackle those issues.
And hopefully we will sit again soon and have had all these challenges addressed, and for entrepreneurs to be easier to start a business and actually work on growing.
Actually, Kak Ahmed is most welcome to visit the Council of Ministers, to come to the Prime Minister's office. We would do whatever it takes to facilitate Kurdividia's process, but not him only, but the other. We want to generalize and formalize this process. It's not about Kak Ahmed, and we have a lot of ideal businesses in the Kurdistan that are flourishing right now. We need to open up this platform. We are aware of it. We have the vision for it. Hopefully, with the office right now, we have a group of Kurdistani people. When I would say Kurdistani people, they have a unified vision of what's going on. I mean, that's something that I'm really proud of in my unit and in my office. We have people from Kirkuk, Slemania, Dok. So they are within people. We understand what is going on. They go to chai khana, to tea coffees. We understand when people talking about businesses, we all have one concern, which is Kurdistan and improving the quality of governance and helping our citizens.
Thank you so much.
I have two questions.
and
Kakshivan, I have two questions. Shortly, I know we're short on time.
Go ahead, please.
So Kakshivan, first, is there any deadlines on these services or on these projects that you're working on? Can you give us any timing that you think some of these important projects like the data or the change in law or especially the company registration that will be done, or an estimate? And two, about intellectual property that Savo Khan also talked about. Currently, we're aware of 5 competitors that are copy-pasting Kurdivia right now in Duhok, Suli, and 2 in Erbil. Even people from within the DIT who we also know the name of the app that they're developing is just same like Kurdivia. And we want to know, is there, are you guys working on the intellectual property? 1 and 2, the deadlines on the amazing projects that you talked about right now.
Thank you for your question. We have divided our priorities into 3 different timelines. We have something called immediate priorities. Within the immediate priorities, we have company registration process that we hope to finalize very soon. So that's a good news. I will not be committed to give you a deadline. I don't want to put myself in an embarrassing situation, but it would be before the New Year Eve. We're not sure when, but I think in the next 3-4 months, we will be able to see the company registration in place, the software developed, and the companies can, of course, apply online. The second question, which is more related to intellectual property protection law. We are right now working on that law. It's been drafted. However, it's not been passed in the cabinet. We need to pass it. There is a really painful bureaucratic process on approving law. So what we did in the priority unit, we have identified this law. Actually, the intellectual property protection is something really important for businesses like Kak Ahmed, Kurdivia, for him to be able to expand even more. I mean, we know this tradition of copying businesses here. So you open a restaurant selling burgers, another day there will be more, like 10 similar businesses in Kurdistan. So we are working on it. We have the draft ready. However, it's not passed. How long it will take, Kak Ahmed? Again, I don't want to be committed to promises.
I hope that we have answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kakshivan. Kakros, please.
So I think there are lots of details we could get into, but I don't want to, at the moment, I think what we really need and what we encourage is other investors to invest in technology startups. I think that's the engine of the growth of the sector. Because ultimately, if people like Kak Ahmed from Kurdivia don't have money, they will fizzle out in a few years. And we really encourage other investors, whether they're regional or local investors, like-minded investors. I can see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, so I can see quite a few potential investors here. So please feel free to talk to startups that we funded, startups that we haven't funded, people that are seeking financing. Talk to them, see what they need, see what they would like to take them. And they really have incredible stories to tell. Now, one thing that we always tell, because Kurdistan is still very new to this idea of angel investing or venture capital investing. And my message to local investors is, please do not start from the point of, I'm going to give you money, you'll become my employee. Start somewhere else. Try to help this business grow, give them some funding, make a fair evaluation of the business, and make sure that that money takes that startup forward, not backwards. Do not discourage them by telling them, oh, I can also create this company myself in 3 days. That attitude does not help any startup. It doesn't help your business to grow. It doesn't help your income to grow as an investor. So we are looking always for improving the investor network. There is 51 Invest that does quite a good well of that. There is Iraq Angel Investors that are bringing together investors on an Iraq level, and we're more than happy if other people decide to invest in companies, participate in rounds, help our companies grow, help their other companies grow, because ultimately this market is free for all. We need to compete, we need a fair competition in the market, and we need all the help. These startups need all the help they can get to push things forward, to demand change, as you see now, so that this cycle can go into a level where it can become a real engine of growth, so that the vision that Kakshivan mentioned, that ultimately we can wean ourselves off oil dependence in Kurdistan and Iraq in general. So thank you.
Thank you, Kakrawaz. And I can see a number of entrepreneurs as well as investors, so that's quite an advice for everyone. We do have innovative ideas. So we do have possible million and billions of dollars worth of ideas. We just need them to be highlighted. We need an environment that actually encourages more startups to launch and also to grow. Thank you for that, Kakrawaz. Kak Ahmed, we talked about copyrights, we talked about IP rights and the lack of IP rights enforcement. You as Cordivia, how do you stay ahead of the competition? How do you keep Cordivia protected from being copied?
Okay. So for all entrepreneurs here and those who have startups, there's this advice that we have received from YC, the international standard for entrepreneurs and the international guideline. They say the only way to deal with this IP issue or deal with competitors, basically, even if there's an IP law in place, the competitors can get into your market in very different ways, in very smart ways that goes over this IP law and is not stopped. So you will still have competitors. It's not gonna stop everyone from doing this technology. That's actually anti-development because it's gonna stop innovation. So the best way to deal with developers, even if this law is not implemented, is actually to focus on customer satisfaction. Is to work with your users, is to work with your customers, is for your product to be so good, so vital to your customer's life that they don't even think about your competitors. That even if the competitor is much bigger than you, is funded with much more money, that they won't think about it because your product is just so good. And in order to have such a good product, you have to understand your user's problem on a very deep level. And in order to do that, HITEX is a golden opportunity right now to survey and talk to your users. You can see that I've lost my voice because I've been talking to users for 3 days non-stop, and we have been collecting data and survey from them to see what are their issues with the product and how they want the product to develop. It's because we want this product to be so good to users that we're not afraid of those 5 competitors that, by the way, some of them have $1 million behind them. Like that's 10 times, 20 times more than us, but we're hopefully gonna be, we have plans and visions to serve our customers' needs right now in a few months in such a way that even if competitors come in the market right now with our previous product, they're not gonna be able to compete with us. And I think that's the answer, is to understand their needs and to provide a product that's just so good.
Thank you so much, Kak Ahmed. Back to you, Kakrawaz, about the IP rights and lack of enforcement. Does it affect the investment scene here? Does it affect the innovation? Does it impede innovation, if I may ask? And if you had one advice to give to a newly started startup to avoid these issues or to deal with them, what would it be?
I think the process of creative destruction by itself, I mean, that's what the engine of private sector growth is. So over time, companies compete with each other. They ultimately make things better, cheaper, faster. And we need to be careful not to have, because we have to understand the legislator's mindset when it comes to these issues. They can be quite protectionist when it comes to these ideas. There is still a general population expectation that the state needs to do a lot of things. And I'm worried that if we talk too much about IP protection, that it may actually backfire on us. So in a way, we have to keep it in mind, of course. I fully agree with Kak Ahmed's approach. Compete your way out of it. Find investors, grow, make your business the most viable one. And that we think ultimately, you shouldn't be scared of international competitors. You should not be scared of regional startups. And one thing that I've noticed with quite a few of the startups, and this is probably like a light criticism, is quite a lot of them are actually not aware of the regional ecosystem, especially the ones that are at idea stage. And this is really, really bad because you have to be aware. If you have an idea, I, as an investor, be sure I will ask you who's doing the same thing in this region. Because in the next 10 years, all of these startups will move into Iraq. If it's an Egyptian company, if it's a UAE company, if it's a Jordanian company, or a Lebanese or a Turkish company, even if it's an Iranian company, at some point,
this market will develop. So I have one of two choices. I either invest with them or I invest with you. So please be aware of that, read a lot, educate yourself about the regional ecosystem. I do not think at the moment there is enough exposure to that problem, and that's why I'm highlighting that.
Thank you so much, Kak Rawaz. Kak Shivan, so you have a number of priorities at the priority unit.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one and solve it immediately, if you had the superpower to pick one and solve it immediately, that's the kind of question we ask at 5-1 Labs. So let's say Kak Shivan has a superpower and you solve one of these issues.
I wish if I had superpower.
Yeah, which one would it be and why?
Is this open as well? Okay, great. So, as I said in the beginning, we have a list of priorities, and they are defined into medium, short, and long-term priorities. The thing that we were really excited about was the pomegranate project that we are working on it right now. Why? Because opening up to the Gulf countries, creating this communication channel, the trade channel, the money will circulate, and hence you will see a lot of startups, not in technology area, not tech-savvy people, no, even farmers would be able to send their products outside. We're really close to sign an MOU with so I would say the closest was to my heart is the pomegranate project. Why I'm calling pomegranate? Because we have identified pomegranate as one of the top products that can be sent outside. We have one of the best pomegranates in the world. However, we can't use those potentials, and that's so unfortunate. Not having a business mind, not having a government formalizing the process of trade is affecting the people really negatively, and it has negative repercussions. Therefore, now we want to formalize this process. We want to open up trade with Gulf countries. Maybe next is fig or cucumber, who knows? So this is another area that investors can come in and invest in it, to invest in opening laboratories for the agricultures, to test the pesticide chemicals of these pomegranate, to for example, come here and do logistics. So yeah, I think one of the top priorities for me right now is the pomegranate project. We have a list of ambitious priorities in the Prime Minister's office. I'd be more than happy to share that with the public. It's all related to startup, to the businesses, to the indirect impact of microfinance on economy and other areas. Hopefully we will be able to push at least the immediate term priorities, which is something that we are working on it right now. Of course, we have long-term priorities. I want to actually emphasize on one point, which is the collaboration that we have with the Deputy Prime Minister's office and the rest of the cabinet. So those priorities was agreed upon by the entire cabinet, all the ministers, and His Excellency the Deputy Prime Minister and His Excellency the Prime Minister. These are top priorities across the KRG. Therefore, whenever we implement any of them, it has a positive outcome on the population of the citizens and on the government itself. Hopefully we will be able to deliver those priorities. So these are the top priorities. We will share, of course, with people like Kak Rawaz, because I know he has a rich insight on what's going on business. We will reach with Savo Khan, and we have a really close program that we're going to implement in near future. And I've invited Kak Ahmed already, so hopefully he will come as well.
Thank you very much. Those are very interesting points, and you have mentioned agribusinesses and agriculture, which we have been neglecting a bit. So we would love, I'm sure everyone would love to see more focus on that as well. I don't think we have time for more questions. Do you guys have any ending remarks?
Yeah, so the final speech that I'm going to deliver to the lovely audience is the vision of the government has changed massively. We now believe in private sector. We believe in companies. We believe that people like Mark Zuckerberg and what he did and how he contributed to USA is actually a true thing, and we believe in it. We believe that Kak Ahmed can do even more. Therefore, having this capitalism idea has changed entirely in the government. We believe in a open up economy, an economy for everyone, investors to come from Jordan, from Qatar to come. We will do whatever it takes to facilitate the process. So as the mindset of the government has changed, and that was because of the visionary, the Prime Minister and the rest of the cabinet, we would be more than happy to support this area of the government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kak Rawaz.
Yeah, so I want to end on a positive note. I think what we are seeing in Kurdistan specifically is there is a very young leadership, which is very encouraging. They are very engaging, actually. They are fairly accessible on Twitter most of the time. I think we have all seen their stuff. So that is super exciting for us. And we'd like that to continue. We understand that it's a huge bureaucracy. There is like 1.2 million people that are government dependent, so change is not going to happen in a day. It will take time, but you know, our message is very simple. You know, support startups, invest in startups, remove the regulations that are making their lives more difficult, and then let us see what happens. You know, let's give this a chance. I think as an ecosystem, we are at a unique point in time where change is possible. And we see that for 3 reasons. One is mobile penetration is high. 2 is security situation across Iraq is improving. And 3, the cost of data and mobile data is quite reasonable. So those 3 factors, if it remains like that, it will be very encouraging for the whole ecosystem. And all it needs is just a bit of support and a bit of hosting from the different stakeholders, whether it's the incubators, the donors who have been incredibly important in supporting people like 51 Labs. So that's people like GIZ, USAID, etc. We are incredibly grateful for their support, and we want to see more grants and donations to those ecosystem enablers, so that this ecosystem can really have its own place in the marketplace.
Thank you so much, Sabo Khan.
Mine? Okay, I'm safe. Our main goal has always been and will always be to create a thriving, vibrant, and also safe environment for entrepreneurs to grow and develop at. So we will be continuing to create these sort of discussions where we highlight these challenges but also offer solutions, and we will also be part of projects with other and different decision-making stakeholders in the ecosystem to make sure there are change and to make sure there's a thriving environment for the ecosystem.
Thank you so much. Very briefly, Kak Ahmed, please.
Okay, I just want to say that I love this panel and I love what I'm hearing. I just hope that we can improve the communication, because you know, we're so focused on working on Kurdivia, we're living under a stone. There are some things that we might not be aware of that could be very helpful for us and for our future. So if we could improve this communication channel, especially with those specific departments in the government that are there to help us, then their job literally day to day is to improve our lives, then can I please be more aware of you and your job, so that you know it could actually help me and I could access those helpful tools. That would be really great for us as Kurdivia and for other startups here in the booths. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for making the time for this in your hectic schedule. Thank you very much for being here. I know that I have promised a Q&A part, but I don't think that we have, You can approach any of the panelists later and ask your questions. Thank you very much for staying with us. Thank you again.